because I spent so many years denying Led Zeppelin and pretending that that I had this new career from nowhere. I talked myself into this kind of whole philosophy of never having ever heard of the group, and getting very short-tempered about the fact that people would remind me about it.
When I was a kid, I was strutting around the stage looking like a cockerel, and struggles with fame and Zeppelin's image. That's okay, that was all right was a bit sort of obvious. But I seem to have done the most obvious thing, because everybody else seemed to have joined in. I was such a cliche with Led Zeppelin, like the bare chest and sort of, oh, baby, 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 squeeze my lemon, and all that. Where on earth does a guy start who really epitomizes a form of music which has been totally misconstrued? Because Led Zeppelin was not a heavy band. It was a very delicate and dynamic arrangement of people. But it was copied by so many people, and really I was kind of faded then, and I didn't realize it until now, well, when you have a reputation or a public that expects just that and that alone, even however much of that change, within itself, it's been moved around a lot. To get on stage with any band, I was immediately seen as the old, he's that rock hero, I mean, we had a great quality control, despite the fact that it was pretty messy at times. The amount of ideas that got slung that could have fallen as it's all over the place. But we just, got rid of. It was interesting because the music was written always at sharp times. You'd know when you started to try and do something, if it wasn't happening. Just, you have to disband. And that meant not seeing each other for months until everybody was prime again. It's very hard to know when that was going to be. There has to be drama. Otherwise, I'd just go home. And yet if I had a home, there'd be drama. So I don't think I'll go there. It has to be there. There's no point in singing about the weather too often, unless it's that classic song that you haven't written. The great thing about Zepp was that it was like a huge sort of incredible one-night stand. It was like everything you could wish for on the first fantastic free date. Everything thrown in every sort of altercation and every lust and every swing and every bit of truth. Then when you start thinking about it, it loses its plot. All of us individually been thinking about what would happen next, because the kind of beginning of the end of Zeppelin, illusion had run its course. I'd already, as part of my beautiful family, losing his son and reevaluating life. Boy, and then you think, I really have to decide what to do. And I applied to become a teacher in the Rudolf Steiner education system. And I was accepted to go to teachers training college. This is in 1978. And I was really quite keen to just walk, because as much as it was spectacular, it also wasn't spectacular. And you do change as the days go by, and you have to get harder and tougher, and but you still got the soft underbelly. I had no idea of tragedy or dealing with anything in life which wasn't just moving on. So when something is as big and there's nothing bigger really, I don't think, than losing your child. And when that happens, you have to review everything about yourself, about your condition, and about the future for your family. And that was it was so sobering that I've never, ever obviously been the same ever again from that. The death of John Bonham, day on. John had lured me back in. Not lured, that's wrong. John had been incredibly supportive to me. John was basically your best friend, wasn't he? Well, a lot of the time when we didn't fight. But I think really we came from the same place, from the black country in England, and neither of us took prisoners, A spade has always been a spade, especially between us two. We weren't the same as the other two guys. Came from a different place. John died when he was 32 after a long drinking session. You've had nearly 40 years more life than him. Do you look back and think, what a waste? Absolutely. Well, what a shame and what a waste. Yeah, so to lose John was the end of any naivety. It was very, very evident that my last connection with Seven really, as far as strong affairs of the heart and the Confederacy and stuff had gone. On the 4th of December, 1980, Led Zeppelin announced that with the death of their drummer John Bonham, the band would split. It must have been daunting. You just come out of fronting this band that's become, starting over post-Led Zeppelin, that's risen to, as I say, iconic status. You're launching a solo career. How difficult was that period for you? Yeah, it was interesting because I was very naked after all that. So I was kind of embalmed, and if you like, swimming in a particularly, I suppose, exclusive little pool for a long time. Not that that was a particularly great place to be a lot of the time, but it was still there, and I was still part of it all. But these changes come anyway in a life. Whatever you do, were you scared? Yeah, I was scared. I was also vulnerable, more than scared really. And when I was 32 when Led Zeppelin finished, and I was just standing there going, wow, I suppose it's a lot then, perhaps I better do a bit of dry stone walling or something like that. How about being a steeplejack? If I like the heights? So I was always sort of wobbling around. It was a case of do nothing and go to seed, or rethink the whole thing. There was a lot of trial and error. And I worked around the clubs in England secretly. Well, I played in a band where my name wasn't mentioned, and it allowed me to get back playing in small places again to sort of refine my confidence in myself. What had happened to your confidence? Well, I was just alone. That was it. I just had to find out exactly whether I had the bottle, the nerve, the desire, the want, the wish. So it was very intimidating. I was glad that I'd made the complete break. To say goodbye after we lost John, just get on with something fresh and new. And it was the right time in my life. I was 32 years old, and I needed to know more than just the role that I'd been playing up until that point in time. I needed to experience more of the game, and I had the choice of either giving up the ghost, actually just saying that's enough, or realizing that I can sing and that I sing okay, and it would be futile to stop because circumstances change. There's no reason why I have to suddenly lock my voice away and be considered to be the guy who used to be. I mean, there's something pretty lame about anybody who says, that's it, unless they've got a good reason to do it. I mean, I entered a world which I knew very, very little about. I'd lived pleasantly with Led Zeppelin for years. And when I started off on my own, I realized I had to manage myself, that the times had changed, that I had to become a part of things that I had very little knowledge about at all. And also I was excited because I could call all the shots and I could make all the mistakes and all the errors and go either way, one way or the other, and just do it. And there's some fantastic stuff because of its absurdity that I was involved in then. And it was great, definitely. But it was certainly for me, it was just moving on, right? Farther and farther away from point A, from when I was 17. Oh, really? Then I was 35, I was gone. I got the musicians together, and I recorded the first album without a record deal or anything at all. I just wanted to see what I could do without committing myself financially or morally to anybody, and to see what might come out of it. And that was one of the tracks from it. It was a kind of hangover from Led Zeppelin, but that first album, emotionally and logically, would be a hangover from Led Zeppelin. The thing is, before, my point of view or my desire was far less relevant then than it is now, because I was only part of something then. They say that you don't really like to talk about Led Zeppelin. But why do you think that people just won't let the whole Zeppelin myth go? Because you're talking about it too much. But it's not true. What is? Of course I didn't. You have to distance yourself. You have to be able to say, but this is what I do, and this is what I want to do, and I don't need that to help me do this. It's an impossible situation, really. How long did it take you to resolve that? Well, I don't think I ever will. But this is as near as I've got, and it's taken 9 years, really, because I spent so many years denying Led Zeppelin and pretending that I had this new career from nowhere, because I want to try and create something that was separate to Led Zeppelin. And so, consequently, I got very pig-headed. I talked myself into this kind of whole philosophy of never having heard of the group and getting very short-tempered about the fact that people would remind me about it. I'm going to play Led Zeppelin songs occasionally when I feel like it. I'm going to try and avoid being one of those kind of cabaret artists who has to rely upon a big back catalog. I think I've distanced myself enough from Led Zeppelin now to be able to actually play Led Zeppelin songs without feeling too bad about it. The other material and what songs are no consequence right now, because I just play whatever I want to play. And these guys were coming along and saying, but it was great what you did personally. Your contribution to that group was very important. And you're a fool to keep on denying it. And I said, but I have to give myself the distance to allow my own integrity to take shape. Short-term generalizations about a career. You never actually get to the real soul of Led Zeppelin, either in discussion on the radio or in quick things on the TV or even sort of straight, quick journalism. And Led Zeppelin was a very sensitive and beautiful animal, beast. And I think that I respect it, and I want a whole sort of effigy of Led Zeppelin to maintain its respect through time rather than keep on using it as a sort of hitch for my career. I've seen whatever I want to see. You don't need that hitch. No. So really I don't. It's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's just that there's a future as well as a past. And you still understand the fascination of a lot of bands and people with less. Like with that? Yeah, I can understand it. Because I didn't understand it. And also, just a very odd thing, because it's the whole momentum of the thing. It was like not even self-propelling. The thing just was an enigma, really. To me, it worked when it worked. It just had its lifespan, in that format, in that kind of in that, what's the word? Not projection. The way it was presented in those days was okay. But it's gone somewhere else quite. I mean, the thing is, success breeds complacency. And bands do, once they've got a theme that works. You can actually stay with that theme for too long, I didn't do that. Zeppelin didn't do that. But Gabriel got out. He got out for all the right reasons. And he started making records, which were very, interesting. If you do it too long, you lose the edge and you aren't really the front man anymore. You're just a marionette, So it's just keeping it vital and actually holding attention. It's a little bit like a ship with no rudder. It tends to go around a little bit, and then it becomes just a standard pop song, so that the hard rock element, actually the Bon Jovi type of thing, becomes 4 beats to the bar, like that sort of thing. And it becomes, as soon as we can get to the chorus, we get to the chorus. So it's 4 to the bar, for the chorus, for the bank, and that's it. I mean, you don't have to do it with the same people forever. God forbid that you do it until it gets that bloody boring that you're just doing it for the sake of it and to make sure you get the next Ferrari or whatever it is. I mean, that's the whole. That's why however many million kroner and Nubles are thrust before Jimmy and I, there would be no point in doing that unless it were for probably twice as much. No, twice as many. And Zeppelin, not only did Zeppelin grow, but the whole capacity for bands to play in really big venues grew. Yeah, the Who and the Stones to a degree, and it was growing at the same time as our popularity. The whole thing got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the capacities and the venues changed, and the whole kind of Dick Clark Roadshow phenomena, our performance changed. So, it was enormous, and I was a bit intimidated. You're part of a certain group of musicians who have. No, I'm not. All right, I'm not, but you're from that time period. I was born around the same time, but that's the only similarity. What do you mean I'm not one of those rock stars? You're not a part of that? Well, I'm not a part of that middle-accepted sort of old rock star, whatever it is, Well, who are they? You mean like MC Jagger, Pete Townsend? I'm not saying anything. I'm just not a part of, I'm not in the sort of club, unlike the Stones or the Beatles. We didn't really go out to do the pop trip. But you're right. In the end, we were corporate fodder. There were executives getting fat and buying cocaine on the strength of Led Zeppelin's success. But it was like, an act of chance, if you like. And, but surely it wasn't corporate rock. Do you feel it's because the music you're making is more adventurous? I just feel that I would like to spend my time in very stimulated musical environment. So I'd rather go up to Boston and find the Del Fuegos and spend a week with them, or spend a week with them not knowing I was around. Just to pick their energy up, However, everybody else, There's a Rolling Stone thing coming out next week, and there's an article in it about the kind of continual vision of Led Zeppelin and the repetition in music. And he's the only guy who didn't comment. I mean, the guy from the cult said, well, there was something real special about them. They were very, very important. Blah, blah, blah. And the only thing I'm glad about is that they're not reforming because we'd be out of a job. And I thought that was great, because they aren't anywhere near as good as Led Zeppelin ever were. But the thing is, Led Zeppelin don't exist. So if there's a hole and they're going to fill it up, at least they're not pretending that it's original.